This conference will now be recorded.
Oops. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Microsoft Word 4. This is the final class in our Word series, and in this class, we'll be building on some of the skills we learned in Word 3. So we will be using some of those object building skills that we talked about in Word 3. So we'll be using things like text boxes and other types of objects to build a letterhead. And then after we build that letterhead, we're going to talk about some new things. So we're going to talk about saving things as a template that you can reuse over and over again. And then we're going to take that letter that we've created and put it through Mail Merge. If you're not familiar with Mail Merge, it is a tool built into Microsoft Word and Microsoft Publisher that allows us to create batch letters, okay, and batch envelope labels. So in this particular example, we are pretending that we are running a business and we're sending out some kind of letter to all of our customers. And what you'll see is that Mail Merge allows us to address each of those letters to each individual person, but only using one letter. So we don't have to, instead of having to create 200 individual letters, we create one letter and then essentially create 200 copies, each one addressed to an individual person. All right, now just a reminder before we get started that we are using Word 2019 in this class, which is one of the more recent versions of this program. As long as you have access to Word 2007 or later, or if you have a Microsoft 365 subscription, you'll see that whatever you learn in this class can be easily applied to those other versions. So just to kind of recap what we'll be talking about today, more specifically, we're going to create a letterhead, again, using objects like we've reviewed in Word 3. We're going to then save that letterhead as a template. All right, so if you remember, when we use these Office programs, we're able to use those built-in templates, which are built-in, ready-made, specific types of files, okay, or specific types of projects. So letterhead is a great example of something that you would save as a template because a letterhead typically includes your company or business's name, maybe its address, okay, and you want to reuse that over and over again for all other correspondences, whether they're monthly newsletters, annual newsletters, specific announcements, etc. So we want to create something that we could reuse over and over again without having to recreate it every single time. So we're going to do that by saving our work or saving our file as a template. Okay, and as I mentioned, part of that letterhead will include objects like pictures, shapes, and we're going to introduce a couple new things along the way, including drop caps and a watermark. Once we get that letterhead set up, we're going to use Mail Merge to create batch labels and letters. So as I said, Mail Merge allows us to essentially create in the case of letters, we can create one letter, create several copies of that letter, each one addressed to a specific person. And then we can also create envelope labels very quickly by just importing contact information into our file. So instead of having to create 200 individual labels, we just perform a few steps to put them all into that sheet in one shot. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and put this away and open up Microsoft Word. All right, give me one moment. I'll be right there. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. Brief delay there. So here I've opened up Microsoft Word, And remember that when we open up an Office program like this, the first screen we come to is our Start screen, which contains on the right side a template gallery. We've talked about this before, so we don't need to go over it in detail again. All right, but it's just a gallery of various types of templates based on specific projects or categories, some of which are listed at the top here. And when you click on one of those suggested searches, it will take you to the full list of template categories. Okay, and this is kind of important because this is essentially what we will be creating today. We're going to create our own template that we can save to this template gallery and reuse it over and over again. On the left side of the screen, we have that list of recent files that we've created and saved in this particular program. All right, and we see there some of those recent files that we created recently. Well, some of those files that we created recently are here. Excuse me. We have Word 1 Practice, Word 2, and the February newsletter, which was our project in Word 3. So they're all there available. So I can quickly click on them and access them again. All right, but today we're going to be building from a blank document. So I'm going to go to the blank document here, or what's really called the new, excuse me, the normal template. I'll click on that to launch it. All right, so here we are on our new or blank document in Microsoft Word. Again, as this is our Word 4 class, kind of like in Word 3, I don't want to spend too much time reviewing the main work area, as we've kind of, by this point, we've really mastered that, right? How we can type into the document and navigate through the document, select text, etc. We understand where the margins are. We understand what text wrap is. All those kind of essential mechanics underlying the word processing program that allow it to work so effectively. But what I will review very quickly is the menu above, okay, our ribbon. I always like to go over this because it's very important. So remember that when we use Microsoft Office 2007 or later, the menu above is called the ribbon. And the ribbon is organized by a series of tabs. So right now I can tell that the Home tab is currently active or selected, and that's your first tab. We also have the Insert tab, Design tab, Layout, References, Mailings, Review, View, and Help. And as always, just ignore the Acrobat tab that's there. That's something extra. That's part of my program. You likely don't have that as part of yours. So just pretend it's not there. So when we click on a tab, we get a different set of tools for each tab. Let me click on the Home tab again. And each tab is further broken down into more specific categories, which are listed at the bottom of that tab, left to right. And we call these groups. Put an X here, because this one on the right you probably don't have. So in the Home tab, for example, we have a clipboard group, a font group, a paragraph group, styles group, and editing group. All right, so those groups are there to help you locate the specific tool you need. And remember that in many of these groups, we have that dialog box launcher, which is that arrow in the bottom right corner of that particular group. All right, so I'll use the paragraph group as a quick example. Once clicked, that arrow will launch a dialog box like this, which typically contains the same tools that are in that group in the ribbon. But instead of using icons, they're laid out in a plain text format, which means that sometimes these dialog boxes are a bit easier to use in terms of locating a specific tool. Also, these dialog boxes sometimes contain extra tools that you won't find in the ribbon. So sometimes we prefer to use these dialog boxes. Sometimes we have to use these dialog boxes. And we will return to a couple of dialog boxes shortly. For now, however, I don't need this at all, so I'll click on Cancel at the bottom right. Okay, in the the top left corner of your ribbon is your quick access toolbar, which allows you to add additional access points to your favorite tools so you can get to them faster. Remember to add tools to the quick access toolbar, go to the very right, click on the icon for more options, which is the triangle with the line over it. It will give you a preliminary list of some tools that you can add. If you want to get to all the tools in the ribbon, go to more commands. And from this dialog box, you can add each command or each tool that you want. You just have to add them one at a time. Select the tab which that tool is found, then select the specific tool from this list, and then click Add here in the middle. Repeat that process for each tool that you want to add to your quick access toolbar. When you're done, click OK at the bottom right, and then they will be available in that toolbar. Okay, and then underneath of the work area, remember you have your status bar, that light gray bar. In earlier versions of Word, this was a nice blue color. It was easier to see. They've changed it in 2019 here to a light gray, but it is the same status bar, just a different color. All right, it has a page count indicator on the left. It has a word count indicator next to it. Over to the right, some quick ways to change the view of your document, and also a zoom level if you ever need to zoom in onto the page or zoom out from the page. All right. All right, so now we covered the lay of the land again a little bit. Let's go ahead and get started with our project. So in this class, we are pretending that kind of like in Word 3, we owned a bakery. In this class, we own a chocolate shop. All right, and what we want to do is we want to create a letterhead for all of our correspondences, regardless of what the correspondence is. It could be a monthly newsletter that we put out. It could be some other special announcement or special event that we want to let our customers know about. It could be really anything that we're sending out to our customers, any correspondence at all. We want to use the same letterhead. Okay, so that's what we're going to be creating here, and then we're going to eventually save that letterhead as a template. And then we're going to take that into mail merge. We'll come to that later. So first, let's get started by building the letterhead itself. And for this, we're going to be utilizing some of the skills we learned in Word 3. So the first thing I want to do on this page, in fact, actually, before we even start building the letterhead, I want to set up some defaults, some default formatting options. So what do I mean by that? And this kind of leads to the idea of a template. So when we launch a blank document in Microsoft Word, or again, what's really called the normal template, okay, it has the formatting options that we get are default options. So for example, when we go to the font group in our home tab, okay, the font style is Calibri, the font size is 11. Those are default settings for the normal template. So every time we click on blank document from the initial start screen, that's what we get because they are the default settings. Okay, the paragraph group, left alignment, that's a default setting. Your margins, remember the margins are 1 full inch on top, bottom, left, and right. Those are default settings. So we are able to change the default settings if we want. So every time we launch a particular, either the normal template or blank document, or if we launch a new template, those settings will always start off with those settings because they are the default settings. So what I want to do before we start adding anything, let's go ahead and set up some of those default formatting options or formatting settings. So first, let's start with font. All right. In the Home tab in our font group, we want to change the font style and the font size. All right. So rather than going to the ribbon itself, we need to consult the dialog box. So we're going to go to the dialog box launcher here, the little arrow in the bottom right-hand corner for the font group, and here it is. All right, so from this dialog box, I can still do the same things I can in the ribbon itself. I can select the font, I can select a few different font styles, as well, and a font size. And then you'll see a few other things down there, strike through, superscript, subscript, which are also available in the ribbon. However, we're going to be setting these up as defaults. So first, let's choose a new font that we want to set as our default setting for this template. So I'm going to scroll down to one called Lucida Calligraphy. Now, a faster way to get to it starts with the letter L. If you select any of these choices here, like I just did, and then press the letter L on your keyboard, it will immediately scroll down to the L's, like so. So now I can just continue scrolling a little bit. I could just use the down arrow here to go down one option at a time until I get to Lucida Calligraphy. There it is. I'll select it. And it gives me a preview down here in case I want to see what it looks like. Lucida Calligraphy. Now I also want to change my default font size for this template. So over on the right, under size, I'm just going to change it from 11 to 12. So I'll just click on 12, and there we go. Now before I click OK at the bottom, all right, on the bottom left, you will see a button for set as default. So that's where I need to go right now to set these as default settings. So now I'm going to get a message. Do you want to set the default font to Lucida Calligraphy 12 point for this document only, or all documents based on the normal template? So what is that asking me? Remember I told you that when we got to the start screen, we clicked on the blank document. I told you that that's really called the normal template. So if I was to select option 2, all documents based on the normal template, that means that these settings would be saved to every new blank document I create. That's not what we want to do. We want to create our own template in which these settings are the default settings. So we're going to leave it as this document only, option 1, and then we'll click OK. All right, now another default setting we want to change is our paragraph and line spacing. So in this case, I'm going to go to the paragraph group in the Home tab, and again, click on the dialog box launcher here. And here's the paragraph dialog box. Now we've covered paragraph and line spacing before, especially in Word 2. So we should be familiar with this. All right, I want my line spacing to be single spaced. So down below under spacing, I'll go over to line spacing. You'll see that as a default, it's right now it's set to multiple. I'm going to change it to single. All right, and I want to also ensure that there's no spacing between any paragraphs, whether they're paragraphs, list items, whatever. Okay, so next door on the left under where it says before after, remember this is your paragraph spacing. I want both to be 0. So I've changed that to 0, 0. I've changed line spacing to single. Again, before I click OK, I'll go down to the bottom, click on Set as Default. And once again, I'm going to make sure I'm sticking with the first option, this document only. I'll click OK. So what this means now is that now eventually we will save this as the template. So every time we open up the template again, these settings will be saved as our default settings. It also means that from here on out, as I type through the document, all those settings will immediately take effect. So whatever I type right now is going to be Lucida Calligraphy size 12, for example. All right, so before we start typing though, let's get started building the letterhead. Now the first part of my letterhead is going to be our company logo, which we're a chocolate shop. Our company logo is just going to be a piece of chocolate candy. All right. Now, in the real world, if we were, I've kind of discussed this before, if we were inserting a logo for our business, presumably that logo would be trademarked or copyrighted, and it would be saved on our computer as a file because it's private. We don't want other people to have access to it. But because we're doing a group class, it's kind of hard to simulate that, right? Because we don't have all access to the same files. So let's just kind of pretend that that's what we're doing here. All right, we are just selecting our company logo. So what we're going to do is just pick one from the internet. So we can all pick the same one if we want to. So to insert pictures, whether they're from your computer or from the internet, we go to the Insert tab in the ribbon. Because remember, anytime we're inserting an object, whether it's a picture, a text box, a table, a chart, they're all in the Insert tab. All right, and we're going to go to the Illustrations group right underneath the tab itself and click on Online Pictures. So we get our search box at the top, which allows us to search for pictures. So I'm just going to type in, how about, let's try chocolate candy. Let's see what comes up. All right, now I don't want any sort of actual photo. I want maybe a drawing in this case. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but that's, that's likely what your logo would be. So I'm going to put in chocolate candy drawing, DRAWING, press enter and see what I get. All right, this is much better. This is what I was going for. Okay. And remember that the Creative Commons filter here underneath where we have that check mark, all right, that means that if that's checked off, that means that all these pictures are part of the public domain. We don't need permission to use them. Okay, so remember that when you insert pictures, you can insert multiple at the same time. You simply just single click on every picture you want to insert. You'll see check marks for each. So in this case, I have 3 selected right now. And down below, it will say insert and then the number of pictures you've selected. So for me, it says insert 3. Now, I only want to insert 1. I just wanted to remind you that you can insert pictures as multiples. Now, to unselect 2 of these, I just click on them again. So I'll unselect this one and I will unselect this one. So I only have 1 picture selected. I go down below, it says insert 1. I'll click on insert. And there's my picture. Now, as usual, it is way too big. Of course, we have to resize it. So let's just review formatting objects. Okay. So objects, most objects anyway, are treated the same way. We will see a selection box around the object. Around that box or around that outline, we get those little dots in the corners and in the center of the left, right, top, and bottom. Okay, those are called resize or sizing handles. And those allow us to resize the object. We simply point at one, get that 2-way arrow, click and drag in any direction to resize the object. Okay, and remember, with pictures especially, you typically want to work from a corner handle and go in a diagonal direction. That will maintain the aspect ratio, so it doesn't look stretched out or distorted. So work from a corner and go in a diagonal direction. If you point between the sizing handles, if you point at the outline, you'll get a 4-way arrow. If you click and drag with the 4-way arrow, you can move the object around the page. Okay, usually. Remember in Word 3, I said pictures are sometimes treated differently initially. We'll come to that in a few minutes. All right, so again, 2-way arrow to point at a handle, get a 2-way arrow to resize, point at the actual outline, get a 4-way arrow to move. Last but not least, when we have an object like this, we get a special contextual menu in our ribbon. So look above and you will see a special picture tools menu here with a format tab. And we call it a contextual menu because if we click outside of the object on the page, the menu goes away. If we click on the object again, the menu comes back. And that menu will just contain several commands through which you can format that particular object. All right, they're kind of commands specific to that kind of object. So we see, for example, the adjust group, the picture styles group, etc. Now, another kind of a funny thing about pictures, especially this was not an issue in Word 2013. This was added either in 2016 or here in the 2019 version. But oftentimes when we insert pictures now, we also get a text box at the bottom of that picture that includes basically a photo credit. Okay, in this case, it just says by unknown author, it's licensed under Creative Commons. Okay, so that's what that is. So the first step in this case, let's get rid of that. And we do that by click on the text of that caption click on the actual text itself. And once you do that, you will see the box around it. It is a separate text box. Now, if you click on the outline of that text box, notice the four-way arrow. If I click with that four-way arrow on the outline, it will select that text box and then just press delete on your keyboard. Okay. And if you're wondering if both objects are currently selected, just look up in your ribbon. If you only see a drawing tools menu and you don't see a picture tools menu, that means that only the text box is selected. So just verify that that's the case, press delete on your keyboard, and the text box is gone. And remember, if you make any mistakes as we're doing this, we have that undo tool in your quick access toolbar, the left turning arrow. All right, just click on that any number of times to go back any number of steps you took in creating your document. All right, so now I'm going to start by resizing this. Obviously, it's way too big. I want it to be maybe about the size of a postage stamp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work from the bottom right corner, the bottom right sizing handle. There's my two-way arrow. I'll click and drag in an upward left diagonal direction. And remember, if you run out of screen space, it's okay. Just let go and just start over again. Now, remember the other trick I told you to very quickly size an object or resize an object to a specific dimension, a set of dimensions. And I'll show you that in 1 second. All right, so this looks like it's roughly 1/2 inch. I'm using the ruler on the left to see that. All right, about 1/2 inch. If you don't see your rulers, remember, just go to your view tab in the ribbon. And in the show group, click on ruler to turn them on. Now, if I go to the special format tab under picture tools, I can also just look to the right in this size group to see exactly what it is. And it does say, in fact, the vertical height of this picture is 0.51 inches. All right, so it's just about 1/2 inch. So if you ever want to just very quickly resize an object to a specific size, instead of clicking and dragging, you can just type right into the box and it will just make it that size immediately. So if I want to do 1 inch, I put in a 1, I press enter. Now it's 1 inch. Let's get it back to 1/2 inch. I'll put in 0.5, press enter. Now it's 1/2 inch again. Okay, and it will maintain the aspect ratio, meaning that whatever vertical height you set it to, it will also change the horizontal width so it doesn't get stretched out and distorted. So it maintains the aspect ratio as a default. All right, so now it's a good size. Now I want to put it in the center of the page, but remember what we talked about Word 3 with pictures. In Microsoft Word, it treats pictures as what's called in line with text, which means that I'm basically locked into the line spaces underneath of that picture. So I can't just move it anywhere. Kind of like we can't just move text that we type onto the document anywhere on the page. I can't just put into the margins, for example. Okay, the picture's locked into those line spaces the same way. So I just need to change the wrap text orientation. So in that special picture tools format tab, in the arrange group here, we go to wrap text. And you'll see that the first option is called inline with text. We want to change it from that to something else. Really, any of these other options will allow you to move it around freely. The one that I find to be most reliable is square. So I'm going to click on square. Now, I can point at that picture, get my four-way arrow, and just click and drag and move it to the right. Remember the alignment guides. They will show you the left margin. Oops, if I can find it. They'll show you, as you can see, the top margin as I scroll left to right. I'm just kind of hugging that top margin. It will show you the center the vertical or the horizontal center of your page, and it will show you the right margin. And of course, it also shows you the bottom margin down below. Okay, so you can always use those to center your object perfectly. Just look for that horizontal center and let go. And if that sounds confusing, remember it's a vertical line, but it's the horizontal center. And there it is. If you don't see your alignment guides, they might be turned off. Just go to your arrange group, go to align, and down below you'll see use alignment guides. If you don't see a check mark there, click it to turn it on, and then you will see a check mark, and then you'll see your alignment guides. All right, now we want to do another object underneath of this. Oh, and remember, you can format pictures in a number of ways. All right, if you want to add some artistic flair, you can always go to your adjust group here in your special format tab, picture corrections. You can sharpen and soften it. You can add brightness or contrast. You can go to picture color to kind of give it a different color essentially than what it currently is. You can go to artistic effects for other options. All right, so all sorts of stuff you can do to these pictures. We're just going to leave it as is, but I just want to remind you that those adjust options are there. Okay, and also you have your picture styles group, which remember I told you whenever you see styles in Microsoft Office, styles indicates a number of formatting options built into one. So you just select one style and it will basically give you a border of some kind and some kind of effect as well, like a shadow effect, a reflection, etc. Again, I'm not gonna explore those here, but I encourage you to explore them later when you're practicing, just to see how they impact your picture. Okay, if you ever want to add some artistic flair to the default look of the picture. So let's add another object underneath. We're going to add a text box, which will include our company name and address. So remember that with text boxes, we typically draw them. The picture was inserted, which means that it goes, once we insert a picture, it just goes where our insertion point is essentially. Okay, that blinking insertion point. But when we draw an object, we can put it anywhere we want the first time around. So we're going to draw a text box underneath of the picture. So let's go to our Insert tab. Let's go over to the right to the text group and click on Text Box. And then we will bypass the built-in options here, go down to Draw Text Box so we can draw it ourselves. Now we get our Draw Cursor, which is that plus sign. And remember, when we draw an object, what we're really doing is just clicking, clicking and dragging to open up that object to a specific size. So you can kind of start wherever you want. All right, I'll just go underneath of the chocolate and just kind of work in a diagonal direction very slowly. All right, right about there looks good for now. We could always resize if we have to. We could always center it later. Let's just get it onto the page underneath the picture like this. All right, so just like the picture, text boxes, they can be moved, they can be resized. We see the same resize handles or sizing handles. Okay, we could resize them the same exact way with a click and drag. And we also see, if we point at the outline, the four-way arrow for moving the text box. All right, but for now, let's get the text in there first, and then we'll worry about the text box after. So just click into the text box and you'll see your blinking insertion point. And by the way, my text box right now, it says 0.882 inches high in the size group there. Remember, now we have a special format tab for the text box under drawing tools, which in some cases contains the same tools that we saw in picture tools. All right, your arrange group and your size group. So again, right now it's 0.82 inches. I might have to make it higher. We'll see. But let's just start typing here. So the name of our business, we're just going to keep it simple. Let's call it Oh So Sweet Chocolate Shop. Oh So Sweet Chocolate Shop. And notice the font, Lucida Calligraphy, size 12. Now I'm going to press enter to start a new line or new paragraph in the text box, because underneath we want to put in our address. And notice that there's no space there between the two paragraphs because we eliminated it in our settings before. Let's see, does it want me to put a comma here? I'm wondering why it's flagging O as a grammar error. Let's see. Let's just leave that alone for now. We'll circle back to that. All right, so I press enter after the chocolate shop. I'm going to put in the address, which will be 2 Cocoa Lane, Cocoa, New Jersey. We're just making something up, of course. 2 Cocoa Lane, Cocoa, New Jersey. I'm going to press enter again. Oops, you know what? Sorry, I don't know why I did it that way. I was looking at the wrong, I have an older lesson plan here. Just 2 Cocoa Lane, excuse me. That's what I meant to do there. Then press enter again for Cocoa, New Jersey, and our zip code, which will just be 11111. That's what I was going for. All right, now if we remember what we talked about in word 3, if we want to center the text horizontally in the text box, it might look a little better if it's centered rather than aligned left. Okay, it's all going to that left margin of the text box. All right, remember, objects have margins just like the page does. So everything right now is set up left aligned in the text box. We want to make it centered. So we can just click on the text box itself. All right, just click on the outline of the text box to select the entire text box. And then we'll just go to our Home tab, go to the paragraph group, click on Center Alignment. Okay, and remember, in a text box, if you want a vertical center, all right, meaning if it was like this, and I wanted it to be centered up and down, that would be the vertical center, or what Microsoft Office would call the middle. Your horizontal center is the center, vertical is the middle, okay? So if we want to do that, we have to go to our specific text box options, which is going to be in that special format tab. Okay, so go to your special format tab, go to the text group here, go to align text, and select middle. And that's your vertical center or vertical middle. And remember, with that in place, anytime I resize the text box potentially, it will stay in the middle no matter what. Now let me just click undo to put it back the way it was. Again, I'm at 0.82 inch height. It actually worked out perfectly. All right, last but not least, let's get the text box centered on the page. So the text is centered in the text box horizontally left to right, but is the text box centered on the page underneath of it? So again, we'll use our alignment guides. Point at the outline, get your 4-way arrow, just click and drag left to right until you see that vertical line coming down. There it is. Now it's centered perfectly. All right, now usually in our classes at this point, we would go ahead and save our work. We're not going to save yet because we're going to be saving it as a template very soon. So we're not quite there yet. Now one last object we want to do is we want to add a line. We want to add a vertical, a horizontal line going left to right across the page, from the left margin to the right margin, not edge to edge, but from the left margin to the right margin. And that horizontal line right around here is going to basically just separate the letterhead from the letter itself. So under that line is where the letter will begin to our customers. All right, so in this case, to establish just a plain line, we're going to insert a shape. So let's go to our Insert tab. We're going to go to the Illustrations group and click on Shapes. We'll see a number of categories. You might see recently used shapes, okay, but if you don't, the first category will say lines. So we're looking for lines. And the very first line in that category is just a plain line, not an arrow. Go ahead and click on it. Again, we get our draw cursor because we're going to draw the line across the page. So again, we don't want to go into the margins, but even if you do the first time, it's okay. We'll resize it later. Let's just get it onto the page. So I'm going to go underneath of the text box. I'll go over to the left, try to get onto the margin the best I can, and just click and drag left to right until I get to approximately the right margin. And again, even if it's not straight, again, don't worry about it. We'll fix it. Just get it onto the page. So there's my line. And again, we see two resize handles, one on the left, one on the right. If we want to, shorten it or lengthen it. It also allows us to adjust the angle up and down. Okay. Now, before I actually let's adjust it first. So we want to make sure that it is touching the margins, and we also want to make sure that it's straight, left to right. So the easiest way to make sure it's straight, rather than adjusting the angle, with a click and drag, use the size group up there in that special format tab, because once again, we get a special format tab under drawing tools, and we get a size group. So really what we're adjusting is the height. So if we go to the height, I just change it to 0, and that's going to be perfectly straight across. Okay. Now we also want to make sure that we're not going into the margins left to right. So once again, I'll just go to each side, kind of move it back and forth until I see the left margin guide. Do the same thing on the right. There's the left. I'm just kind of clicking and dragging back and forth. There's the right. So now I'm touching the margins perfectly. Now, while doing that, I may have tilted the line again by accident or angled it. So I'll just go back up to the size group and change my height back to 0, just to ensure that it is perfectly straight. Last but not least, for whatever reason, when Word enters a line like this, it does it in a blue color as a default. I want to make it black. So all I have to do is, with the line selected, go up to my special format tab, go to the shape styles group. All right, remember, whenever you see shape styles, that's going to impact the object itself. So shape styles, I'll go to shape outline here and just change it to black. Okay, now, so everything's nice and centered, nice and straight, everything looks good. So we have this nice letterhead. Now, as we're building the rest of the document, as we're typing into it, so one thing that can be tricky when you have multiple objects like this, they're kind of, at least for me right now, they're aligned perfectly with one another, right? The spacing between each is just where I want it. Everything's centered nicely. Also though, if I decide that this letterhead would be better maybe a little further down the page, something like that, then I have to move each object again separately, which means that I might mess up the spacing between each, I might off-center them, et cetera, et cetera. So a way to kind of ensure that everything stays nice and evenly spaced and aligned, and also at the same time, a way that allows you to move this very quickly and easily is to group our objects together to form one object. So when we click and drag, we move everything as one. So to group your objects, you have to select all three first in this case. So take your time with this part because it can be a little bit tricky. So remember that when we use a PC, really regardless of what program we're using, if we're able to select multiple items, we often have to do that with our control key on the keyboard. So I'm going to select the picture first as normal. I'm just going to click on it. So the picture is selected. All right. Now to select the text box, but still keep the picture selected at the same time, I'm going to hold down the control key. And while I'm holding it down, I'll go down to text box. And this is important. You don't want to click until you see the mouse, the arrow. You don't want to see the I-beam. Click on, when you see the arrow, click on the text box. Now the picture and the text box are grouped. Well, they're almost grouped, but they're both selected. Last but not least is the line underneath. So I'm still holding down the control key. I'm going to go down to the line. Once again, I'm not going to click until I see the arrow. There it is. Now the picture, the text box, and the line are all selected. So now I can go up to the special format tab. You'll see picture tools and drawing tools. It doesn't matter which one you go to. They both have the same tool. So go to either of the special format tabs, go to the right to your arrange group, and you'll see group. Click on the group dropdown, and again, click on group from the list. And now they're grouped together as one object. So if I move this, it all moves as one object, which maintains the nice even space and the nice alignment between each object, so nothing gets messed up. Okay, now you can still, you can still select individual objects in this group to format them. I can't resize them or move them, but I can format them. So for example, if you want to change the color of your line, you could still do that. Just click on the line itself and then consult the menu. So one thing that I do want to do to one of these objects is the text box. I want to get rid of the outline. So if I just click on the text box, okay, you will see the group is selected, but the text box has a solid line, which indicates that the text box itself is what's really selected right now. So now if I go up to the Format tab to the Shape Styles group, I'll go to Shape Outline and click on No Outline. Again, it's still grouped. We're just formatting one object in that group. All right, and just real quick, while we're on the subject of multiple objects, remember, if you ever need to layer objects, which sometimes happens, we want to put maybe a picture over a text box, for example. All right, in order to control that layering, that's also in the Arrange group in the Objects Respective Format tab. All right, you'll see Bring Forward, and you'll see Send Backward. Okay, that allows you to control the layering of your objects. All right, so we'll say that I'm sorry, one more thing we want to do for our template here. We want to add a footer which contains our company slogan. So let's do that very quickly. That will be easy. And that allows us to review headers and footers as well. So let me just unselect this object. real quick just to get rid of that selection box. And let's go ahead and insert a footer. And into that footer, we will type in our company slogan. So remember, to insert headers and footers, this means that we're going into the margins. The header goes into your top margin, the footer goes into your bottom margin. So to do that, we need to manually insert a header or manually insert a footer. So I'm going to go up to the Insert tab in my ribbon, go over to the Header and Footer group, and click on Footer. And then I'll bypass the built-in options and go down to Edit Footer down here, which will put me into the footer position at the bottom margin of the page, like so. All right. Okay, so our company slogan is going to be, and above all, ... think chocolate, ! And notice I'm capitalizing the T in think and the C in chocolate, because that's essentially, that's just how we stylize our slogan here. And above all, ... think chocolate. So again, this is going to the bottom margin of the page. Also remember that when we insert headers and footers, again, we're using a tool from the Insert tab, so we, like most others, we get a special menu above. We get a header and footer tools menu with a design tab, which we've discussed in a couple other, in Word 2 especially. All right. So if you want more detail about formatting headers and footers, I encourage you to check out the Word 2 video on our YouTube channel. But this one's pretty simple. The only thing I want to do here is just center it. All right, we're going to keep this simple. So I'm going to just select that text down below. I'll go to my Home tab. I'll go to the paragraph group and click on Center Alignment. Now to leave the footer or the header, whichever one you happen to be in, remember you could either go to your Design tab under Header and Footer Tools, that special tab. On the right side, click on the X that says Close Header and Footer. You can also just double click outside of that margin, and that will put you back onto the normal text area. We call that the normal text area. All right, so now our template is complete. So this is basically our letterhead. This is something that we can reuse over and over again. So underneath of the line, we would type a letter, and that's the part that would be unique, right? That's the part that would be changing every time. But everything else we want to leave the same, so we could just reuse this over and over again. Okay, so what we want to do next is save this, but save it as a template. All right, so we're going to go to our File menu. We're going to go to Save As, like we usually do. Oh, okay, good. All right, Save As. We're going to go to, we want to save this on our PC, not our OneDrive account. So I'll click on this PC from this list. And then down here, I'll click on Browse to browse the folders in my computer and select an appropriate folder. All right, however, we don't really have to select the folder because, I mean, you can, but Office typically will save templates to a specific folder that's already built. So first, let's give this template a name. So let's go down to File Name, where it says Doc1, and we can call it you can call it the Chocolate Shop template, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it Oh So Sweet. I'll just call it Oh So Sweet template. That's fine. Now, underneath where it says Save As Type, this is something we typically gloss over because you're usually saving your work as a Word document. Okay, but we could save our work as different types of files or different types of file formats. So if you click on that, you will see a list of other formats. And the fourth one down is Word template. Okay. Also of note, just to point out, is the PDF. In case you ever need to convert a Word document to PDF, you can do that here. But in this case, I'm going to click on Word template. And you'll notice that once I do that, as I mentioned, it puts it in a special subfolder called Custom Office Templates, which is in your main Windows Documents folder. So we'll just leave it there. Now I'll click Save. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this file here. I'm going to close the template. In fact, you might want to do the same, just so you're not, you don't want to be altering the template anymore. So you can close it. I'm going to now reopen Word. And this time, if I go to the template gallery, there's a new section that wasn't here before called Personal. These are your templates, okay, the ones that you've created. So if I go to Personal, I will see right there the Oh So Sweet template. I click on it to launch it, and I'm right back. However, what's important to note, if you look in the title bar of your window, what is the title bar? At the very top center of the window, where it says Document 1 Word. Okay, that's called the title bar. So basically, this tells me that the name of this document is called Document 1. It doesn't say Oh So Sweet template. That's because, remember, we're building a new document based on the template. So in this case, we're not actually in the template we just built. That's why I told you to close it to be safe. All right, by clicking on the template from the template gallery, it starts a new document based on that template. So any changes we make from here on out are saved as a separate document. The template isn't touched at all. That's still just the template. So again, by clicking on the template, we are creating a new document based on that template. So we're in a brand new file right now. All right, now I'm going to go underneath the line. I'm going to set up a new. I don't mean to make it sound confusing. I'm going to go underneath the shape, the line shape, and start a new line where I can type my letter. So if you just double click underneath the line, okay, you'll force your blinking insertion point down to that new line. And if you're kind of hugging the shape, maybe just try going down a bit further, double clicking again until it's all the way underneath. All right, so now eventually our letter is going to be addressed to somebody, and it's going to include their return address, just like a real letter you would mail in, just like a letter you would mail in real life. Okay, but we're not going to. We'll come to that in a little bit. First, let's just start with the first sentence of the actual letter. Okay, and we're not going to type an entire letter. We'll just type in one sentence, and we'll just kind of pretend that we're typing in an entire letter. Okay, so my blinking insertion point's ready to go. I'm going to start typing. Let's see if I can just. I'll zoom in a little bit for this part. You are invited to the second annual chocolate affair. Okay, and by the way, Word automatically formats ordinal numbers like you see there, where it says 2ND. That's what we call an ordinal number. By typing in 2 and then ND and then pressing the space bar, it will automatically put that ND as a superscript. All right, it does that automatically. You are invited to the second annual chocolate affair. I'm going to put a colon here. If you're not familiar with the colon on the keyboard, the key to the right of the letter L, hold down shift and press that key, that's your colon. And it's going to say an Epicurean evening of decadent desserts. You are invited to the second annual chocolate affair, which in this case is called an Epicurean evening of decadent desserts. In fact, I should capitalize that A for un. So I'll backspace and change that. An Epicurean evening of decadent desserts. There we go. All right, and then like I said, we're just pretending that we're going to fill that in with more information about the event. Let's just leave it right there because I think that's good enough. We really just want to get what we're really focusing on here is soon mail merge. All right. Now, before we get to the mail merge aspect, there are a couple other things I want to do to this. Word contains some kind of cool formatting commands or formatting options that are kind of something we use in letters. Okay, they're kind of specific to letters to jazz it up a little bit. So the first of which is called the drop cap. You've probably seen this before, whether in a physical letter or maybe in an email even, where to draw emphasis to the first sentence of the letter. All right, so kind of like when you're reading it, you know where to start for the actual subject or content of the letter. What people often do is they take the very first character of that letter, which in this case is the letter Y for you, and they make it bigger than the rest of the characters. Okay, that's called a drop cap. Word allows us to do that. It's actually in the insert tab. All right, it's treated as an object, and we'll see that in a minute. So if you go to your insert tab, you will see over to the right in the text group where we have text box, you also have a tool called drop cap or add a drop cap. Okay, but before, in fact, I'm just trying to make sure I'm right. Yes, you don't actually have to select the letter Y first because, again, the drop cap is locating the first line of your letter as automatically. Let me just see what happens if I'm up here. No, because that's a text box. Yeah, so basically the first, it's going to find the first sentence of your letter automatically. Yes. Okay. So no need to select the letter Y. Let's just go to the text group, click on add a drop cap. And there's two options, dropped or in margin. Let's put the letter Y in the margin. So we're going to go to in margin and click that. And there it is. So that's a drop cap. And you'll see a box around it. As I said, it's treating this as an object. So I can resize that letter Y if I want to make it smaller or bigger by using the sizing handles. Okay, they're not little dots, but they are little squares. So I could always resize it. Let me put it back to the way it was. And if you point between the little squares, you get a four-way arrow and you can even move it. Okay, and we will have to move it eventually, but let's just leave it as is for now. And by the way, since we're on a new document, we're not on the template, we can go ahead and save. So I'm going to go to the File menu. I'm going to go to Save As. Again, I'll go to this PC. I'll go to Browse. It's going to put you in your Windows Documents folder. Okay. I'm going to put it in a specific subfolder called Class Samples, but you can save it wherever you want. I'll go down to File Name, and I'll call this Second Annual Chocolate Affair. Second Annual Chocolate Affair. You can call it whatever you want. If you want to call it something shorter, that's fine. Second Annual Chocolate Affair, I'll click Save. Now, one last thing we want to do. Again, something that's kind of unique to letters. We can insert, or I shouldn't really say insert, we can embed a watermark into the page. Watermarks, if you're familiar, they're typically kind of a semi-transparent or faded text that's in the background of something. It's usually there to, in many cases, it's there to kind of verify authenticity. So if there's a watermark, that means this is a legitimate letter, for example. So we can do that in Word if we want, but in this case, it's not in the Insert tab. We don't insert them; they're not objects. Okay, we embed it into the page itself. Okay, I talked about the difference in Word 3 between inserting an object and changing the design of the page. In this case, we are changing the design. So we're going to go up to our design tab in the ribbon. Over to the right, in the page background group, we'll click on watermark. And down below, we're going to bypass the built-in options as we usually do, and we'll click on custom watermark and build our own. So we get this dialog box called printed watermark. So let's look at the options here. No watermark, picture watermark, text watermark. We could put a picture in the back if we wanted to, in the background. We're going to do text though. So let's click on the button for text watermark. Now, as a default, it's going to say ASAP. Okay. But we're going to change that to RSVP. In fact, maybe that's available in this list, I wonder. No, it's not. All right. So we can type in whatever we want. We don't have to choose something from this dropdown. So just erase ASAP and in all caps, type in RSVP. Now it's gonna maintain the same default font, Lucida calligraphy. Remember, we set those as default settings for this template. That's why we're still getting Lucida calligraphy, size 12. All right, we'll leave that alone. We're gonna leave it as semi-transparent here. We're also gonna leave it where it says layout. Let's leave it as diagonal. Okay, I think that looks a little better. And we're going to leave the color as is. All right, now this sometimes takes a bit of trial and error. So instead of clicking OK, click apply and see how it looks. See how it says RSVP on the page. All right, I'm going to close this. Let me just see. Let me close it. I'm going to close my dialog box. You can leave yours open because by clicking apply, it leaves the dialog box open in case you need to adjust it. That's why I said click apply. So you'll notice on my page, it does say RSVP in the background. Okay, there it is. And what you're looking for is you want to make sure that it's not crossing into the actual letterhead over that horizontal line. If it is, really the only thing you can do is change the size. So that's why I was saying sometimes it takes a bit of trial and error. So let me go back to my watermark dialog box here. And where it says size auto, just scroll down to the largest, which is 144, or the largest in this list. Try that first, click apply. See how that looks. If you're still crossing the line, go smaller keep clicking apply until you're underneath that horizontal line, and then click OK. And I'm going to do a quick save to update this document. So we have our drop cap, we have our watermark. Let's get to mail merge. So now that this is ready to go, again, we're pretending that we typed out an entire letter here. Now we want to mail this to any number of customers, 10, 100, 200, 500, okay? So essentially, we're going to use mail merge to expedite the process. We're going to create batch labels for our envelopes. All right, so which will save us a lot of work. First of all, we can print them out into self-adhesive labels, so we don't have to write onto each envelope, of course. So it saves that work. And also, we don't have to type out necessarily each address individually. We could use something we have saved. We'll come to that in a few minutes, what I mean by that. And then we're going to create batch letters. So we're going to create several copies of this, so each one is addressed to a specific person. All right, now let's do labels first. All right, so we're going to go to the mailings tab in the ribbon. All right, but we're not going to do anything yet. I just want to show you what's here. So mail merge is essentially a step-by-step process, okay? And all those steps are available up in the ribbon itself. if you're experienced with it, you can kind of go through each step in your own time. However, we're going to use essentially a tutorial or a guided wizard to help us through the steps. And even though I've done this a million times, I still use the wizard because it really helps, because there's always, inevitably, there's one little thing that you might forget, okay? Now, before we start labels, the labels have to go on their own page. Obviously, we're not going to put the labels onto the actual letter. So before we do this, we need to create a new blank document. So let's go to the File menu. And let's go to New. And we can just create blank document. That's fine. We don't need to use the template. And there it is. Now, we can go ahead and start our label. So let's go up to the Mailings tab. Let's go to the Start Mail Merge group, go to Start Mail Merge here, and down at the bottom of that list, you will see Step-by-Step Mail Merge Wizard. Let's click on it. And you'll see on the right side, a pane opens up, a Mail Merge pane. So you'll see that, as I said, it just walks you through each step. It will ask you a question of some kind, sometimes maybe a couple things you have to fill out. All right, and then once you're done, down below you'll see next. So you'll see it says step 1 of 6. So we'll click next. It will go to step 2, et cetera, until we're done with our labels. Very intuitive. So in step 1 here, it asks us what type of document are you working on. We want to create labels, so we're going to click on the button for labels. Now we go down and click on next to go to step 2. All right, now it's asking us select starting document. How do you want to set up your mailing labels? Change document layout, start from existing document. All right, start from existing document would allow us to select an existing document. Okay, so if you had already done this before, you might be able to kind of add to it, something like that. In this case, though, we're creating a brand new one, so we're gonna keep it as change document layout. And by changing the document layout, basically what it means is it's gonna create a table into which we put our labels. We'll see what I mean by that in a little bit. So just leave it as change document layout for this blank document. Now underneath it says change document layout. Click label options to choose a label size. So we're gonna click on that little link that says label options, and we'll get a dialog box, which is coming. Give it a minute. Sorry, there it is. Okay, label options. Now, what does it mean by label options? So you can, if you're familiar with this, when you're creating your own labels, all right, you can purchase from any office supply store sheets of self-adhesive labels. You peel them off, you stick them onto an envelope, right? And depending on the vendor, the product, the specific product it is, the labels come in different sizes. Okay, so what this is doing is it's allowing us to select the specific type of label we have in front of us. We go to the office supply store, we buy this particular one, so that's what we're selecting here, and then it will adjust the dimensions accordingly. So we see right down here label vendors. The label vendor we need is called Avery. So I'm going to scroll down to Avery US letter. Avery US letter, I'm going to click on it. Avery is one of the more popular brands out there for these. So that's why we're going with this one, because this is something that you would definitely find, again, in really any office supply store or store that sells office supplies. All right, now we need to select the specific label, because Avery, they manufacture several different sizes of labels. All right, different types of labels. The one we need, you'll see product number down here. All right, the one we need is product number 5160, 5160. All right, now if you scroll, it's going to take forever. So kind of using the same technique we used before with our fonts, click on one option here and then press 5 on your keyboard, which will bring you right down to the 5000s. Now I could just use the down arrow to scroll to go down one at a time until I get to 5160. There it is, 5160 address labels. And on the right side, it shows you the dimensions, 1 inch high, 2.63 inches wide. And they're on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Okay, normal size printer paper or copy paper. So now that I've selected the vendor and the specific product number, I'll click OK. And if you look at the page, there's the quote, the document layout it was referring to. It's changing the document layout to accommodate the specific labels we chose. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see the whole thing. And as you can see, these are set up in 3 columns, 10 rows. So 30 labels will fit onto one sheet. And all it's really doing is setting up a table. We did a table in Word 3, remember? Where you can establish a number of columns and rows. That's what it's doing. It's just setting up a table. Notice the Table Tools menu above, okay? It's setting up a table that matches the specific dimensions we need for these labels. So now that we've established the document layout and our labels, let's go down to go to step 3. So we'll click on Next, select Recipients. All right, now, if you're setting this up for the first time, this part might take a little bit of time because we have to establish our contact list, okay? But on the right side, you'll see select recipients, use an existing list, select from Outlook, type a new list. If you have Outlook connected to your Microsoft Word, that could be useful because you could just import contacts from your Outlook account, which might save you some time. But what we're going to do is we're going to type a new list. I'll show you how to do it right here in Word in case you want to set up a new one. So we're going to click on the button for type a new list, and then down below we'll click on Create, which again opens up a dialog box called New Address List. Okay. Now an address list, as it says, is actually, it's kind of a specific type of file format. So what we're doing right now is we're creating a separate file that contains our contact list or address list. All right. And then we just import the data from that file onto the Word document. So we're kind of, right now we're creating a separate file called an address list. That's what we're doing. And you'll see that it's basically set up like an Excel spreadsheet. We have a number of fields into which we enter specific information. Okay. Oops. I'll go back. That's okay. We're just going to leave that as is. So what you're going to see, we're not going to fill in every field, by the way, only some of them. And we'll just do, to keep it simple, we're going to do 3 contacts. We're going to do 3 entries so we can see a full row on our sheet. All right. So it's very simple. You just go to each field, you type in the information. You can either press tab to go over to the right or just click into the next one to work on it. And keep in mind there is a horizontal scroll bar to scroll left and right because there are more fields if we need them to the right. And when we're ready to create a new entry, we go down here and manually click on new entry. So let's start with our first entry, first name. We'll just do, let's just do Joe. I'll click into the last name box and do Smith. I'm going to skip over company name. I'll go to address line 1. I'll just put in 123 Main Street. I'm going to scroll over a little bit. I'm going to go to city. I'll put in Chicago. and then I'll go over to state and put in IL for Illinois, capital I, capital L, Chicago, Illinois. And then I'll go to zip code, and we'll just pretend that the zip code is 22222. Now I'm going to scroll back over to the left, and I'm going to go down and click on new entry to create my second one. I'll go to first name, Jane, last name, Doe. I'll go over to address line 1, 456 Maple Ave. I'll scroll over to city, Seattle. I'll go over to state, WA for Washington, and then I'll go to zip code and just put in 33333. I'm going to scroll back to the left and do one more. Click on new entry. First name is Scooby, Scooby. Last name is Doo, Doo. I'll go to address line 1 and put in 99 Spooky Lane. I'll go over to city. I'll put in San Diego. State, CA for California. Zip code 44444. Okay, so that's my address list. All right, I'm getting a sip of water real quick, and I'll be right back. All right, so again, the address list is complete. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And once I do that, it's going to, as you can see, go to a save as dialog box, like as if we're saving a new document. It does this automatically. But notice it at the top, it says save address list. Because like I said, what we were just doing was creating a new file. That file is a database file, okay? It's a specific type of database file. As you can see down here, it says save as type Microsoft Office address list, all right? And as a database file, I can technically open it, not just in Word, I can open in Excel as well. Really any program that recognizes fields like that, it will work, all right? But I don't want to, let's not get too into the weeds on that. So we're saving a database file called an address list. Kind of like the template, there's a dedicated folder for these already created in your documents folder called My Data Sources. That's where it's going. All right. So next to file name, you can call this address list whatever you want. I'm just going to call it Chocolate Shop Customers. Chocolate Shop Customers. And then I'll click Save. Now, once you do that, we still have one more dialog box that pops up, Mail Merge Recipients. So now it's basically connecting that database file or that address list with the actual document underneath. And it's asking us, do we want to include everybody in the list? Is there anybody we want to exclude from this particular mailing? You could, if you needed to, you can uncheck them from the list, okay? You can sort and filter like we can in Excel. If you need to if you have 200 people, you need to sort them by name or whatever, state, you can filter them. Whatever you need to do to kind of locate specific people. But in this case, we're just going to leave it simple, leave everybody checked off, and click OK. So now it starts to kind of populate the document, as you can see, populate that table. So now we go over to the right and go to step 4, where it says next, arrange your labels. Now, it's basically what it's asking us now. It says, if you have not already done so, lay out your label using the first label on the sheet. So that's important where it says the first label on the sheet, because it's basically using the first label as a template for the rest. Okay. So essentially what it's asking us now is, how do you want that information to look? Do you just want the name? Do you want all of it? Okay, what we want is an address block because these are envelope labels. So we're going to click on the option for address block. And now it's going to give us a preview. That's what it's going to look like. Okay, and this is important. As I said, you want to use the first label on your sheet as the template. So sometimes if you maybe you clicked onto into the table or something, if this doesn't say 1, where it says here's a preview from your recipient list, just click on the left arrow to go back to 1, the first label. Okay, because then if you're not starting with label 1, it will not import that information. I've seen this happen a few times in class. So we want to make sure we're starting with 1. We'll click OK. Now label 1 shows address block because, again, that's going to be essentially the template for the rest of them. So now let's go back to the right side. And before we go to step 5, you'll see replicate labels. It says you can copy the layout of the first label to the other labels on the page by clicking the button below. So now we click update all labels. And now they all say address block, so they're all copying the formatting of the first one. Now we go down and go to next, preview your labels, step 5. All right, and we only had 3. That's why it's only filling in the top 3 there. But that's how they look. Okay. And again, we're in this step where it says preview your labels, make sure it's showing recipient 1. If I click right accidentally, notice it gets rid of the first label because, again, you are basing everything off of label 1. Okay, you can still make changes to your recipient list. If you change your mind, you'll see edit recipient list here, but let's go down where it says next, complete the merge to go to step 6. All right, so from here, you kind of have 2 choices. If you just go to print, it will merge them, merge to printer, and it will just print out your labels as shown. So of course, you would want to, you have to, in most cases, you'll manually feed the printer because you don't want to have 100 sheets of labels because you might not use them again anytime soon. So you just, 1 sheet at a time, however you want to do it, put in 1 sheet, click print, and then it will print out 1 sheet. Okay, or if this was 3 pages of labels, you would just put in 3 sheets, click print, etc. Okay, and then it prints out onto those nice self-adhesive labels and you're all set. Now you can still make adjustments if you have to. Okay, you can go to edit individual labels, but what I usually do is just go right to the document itself. Okay, because remember, this is just a table. That's all it is. So like one thing that happens sometimes is maybe if I added a 4th line, like an apartment, into that initial contact list, notice how Chicago, Illinois zip code is cut off just because of the way that the font size is in this table and the spacing between the paragraphs. All right, so I might have to make some adjustments every so often. So if this was 200 people, you would just want to be careful and proofread and make sure that everything looks good. So you can make adjustments if needed. So you could always, it's kind of confusing. It looks like it's selected, but you actually have to select it again over it, like this, your text, and then you can make adjustments like changing the font size or maybe changing the spacing between the paragraphs, everything fits, whatever it is you have to do. so it fits onto the label. All right. And again, once all of your edits are made, you could just go click print on the right, and you're ready to go with your labels, all set. Now in the future, you have your contact list built, your address list. So from here on out, you could just keep using it. You don't have to create a list again, of course. If you need to add new entries, just you can, as we're going to see in a few minutes, you can open an existing list and just add new entries if you need to without having to do the whole thing over again. And remember, you could also exclude people if you ever need to from a specific mailing. So now their labels are technically complete. Let's go back to the letter, which is still open in my Word program here. Here it is. Now on this letter, we want to merge some information. We want to merge some information onto this letter directly. So we're going to leave it on here. We're going to go back up to the Mailings tab. We're going to go to Start Mail Merge in the Start Mail Merge group, and again, go to the Step-by-Step Mail Merge wizard. On the right side, the pane, step 1 asks us, select document type. This time we want to do letters. We want to create multiple copies of this letter, each one addressed to a specific person. So we're going to leave it as letters and go down and click on Next, Starting Document. Select starting, now step 2, select starting document. How do you want to set up your letters? Okay, again, we could start from a different template. We could start from an existing document, or we could just use this document right here. So we're going to leave it as use the current document. Then we're going to click Next, select recipients. So this time we don't need to type out a new list of recipients. We just use an existing address list. So leave it as using an existing list. And down below, click Browse here to select a specific address list from your computer in case there's more than one. It goes right to your My Data Sources subfolder, because remember, that's where those database files are saved. And I'll select the one called Chocolate Shop Customers, and I'll click Open. Okay, once again, we get the Mail Merge Recipients dialog box. So now it's connecting that file to this document. And from here, if I need to, I can exclude specific customers from this mailing. And I believe if you come down here to where the actual file name is, let me just see if I go to edit. Okay, I can't do it in the same workflow. You can add new entries, but you'll just have to open that address list by itself essentially to do that. All right. So now I'm going to click OK here because I want to use all of my contacts, all my customers. And then I'm going to come down here and go to step 4, where it says next, write your letter. That will take me to step 4. Again, it's asking us how we want that information formatted. So we want two things. We want a return address and we want a greeting line. So first will be the return address, which again is an address block. But before you click on address block, it's going to go wherever your insertion point is. Okay, so relocate your insertion point first before the beginning of the sentence. Okay, and remember the Y is separated. So first, I'm going to add some space above this line. I'll just press the Enter key. I'll press it twice, 1, 2. Now I need to take that Y and just move it down with a click and drag, because remember, this is an object, so we need to just move it like any other object. That looks fine right about there. Now I'm going to set up my insertion point right here above that first sentence. Remember, you could just do a double click, or actually in this case, you could do a single click since the line has already been created. And there it is. That's where the address block is going to go. So now I'll go to the right, I'll click on address block. It gives me a preview. Remember, make sure you're looking at preview number 1. Click OK. So it shows up as address block, okay? Because remember, we're creating several copies, each one as an individual person. So that's why right now it's only going to tell you address block. Now let's go to the right. We could still add more. So we want to add a greeting line underneath that says Dear So-and-so. Before we do that, we need to create a new line for that greeting line. So I'm going to press enter to move my insertion point. I'm going to hit enter one more time because I want a space between the address block and the greeting line. Now I'm going to go to the right and click on greeting line. Again, we get a preview. It's asking us if we want to make any changes to how it's going to read. We're just going to leave it as is. We want to make sure we're looking at preview number 1. We'll click OK. Now it says greeting line on the page. So now that we've added our information from the address list, we'll go to the right, go to step 5, preview your letters. So here's letter number 1. All right. Now again, you want to make sure, we still need to do the actual merge, okay? So we want to make sure on the right, under preview your letters, you're looking at recipient 1 because you want to be starting from your actual first label. If you're not, just click the left arrow to go back to 1. Now we'll go down to the bottom. Next, complete the merge to go to step 6. Okay, now, if we click print, you will get, it will print out your letters to each person. But if we want to see them, so we can kind of see what it looks like before we print, let's go to edit individual letters under merge, okay? Because this will allow us to actually, let's say a few of them we wanted to add some information or personalize in some way, okay? We could go into an individual letter and make changes. So that's what this will do. So let's click on edit individual letters. All right, we want to look at all of them, so leave it as all and click OK. All right, we want to look at all the individual letters, so leave it as all, click OK. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a new document. All right, if you look up top, it says letters 1 in the title bar. This is a new document containing the individual letters. So page 1 is addressed to Joe Smith. Page 2 is the same exact letter, but addressed to Jane Doe. Page 3, same letter addressed to Scooby-Doo. So again, you don't have to do this preview necessarily. You could just print directly. But in order for me to show you what it looks like, okay, what happens when we do the merge, I went to edit individual letters so you could see it on the screen. And again, you would do this if you needed to make any adjustments to specific letters. Now, one tricky thing about mail merge, if you want to print your work, if you want to save it, if you're on this letters 1 document and you go to print it, okay. So let's just say you want just one sample. Okay, so you could go to print all, custom print here and just only print page 1. However, you'll still get all 3 because technically they're all considered page 1 because they're each an individual letter essentially, right? So if you want a sample for yourself, what I would advise, just go back to the original letter and print this one because it does have your first address on it. So I would just print this one. All right, I'll close that mail merge pane. And now we're all set with our mail merge. We can send these out. And remember, the labels will print out onto self-adhesive. Labels or stickers that we could just peel off and stick onto each envelope. So it's great for big mailings like this to customers. It's great for, I always show people this for things like holiday cards. All right, if you're sending out a whole bunch of cards for a particular holiday, that will speed things up. You could also use it for other events, maybe weddings. Okay, save the dates, wedding invitations, etc. All right, so the labels especially will really make things easy, make things much easier for you in terms of doing batch mass mailings. All right, you'll find mail merge in Publisher as well because, of course, Publisher we often use for things like newsletters, flyers, cards, etc. So it's also found in Publisher. The steps are the same. And by the way, if you're interested in Publisher, I will be having that class in March next month. All right, so at this time, if you have any further questions about what we covered in Word 4 here today, I invite you to direct them to the GoToMeeting chat feature. Just click on the chat bubble at the top of the window, type in your question and hit send. In the meantime, I'll go through a few closing remarks and then we'll be all set for the day here. All right, so remember that this class was recorded and it will be available on our library's YouTube channel. All right, to get to that recording and all the other class recordings, visit mcl.org, our library website. Click on the YouTube icon at the top left of the homepage. That will take you to our YouTube channel, and once you're there, go to playlists and then select the computer instruction playlist. And as I always like to remind you, there are several other playlists from which you can view recordings. Okay, we have playlists for all different library programs, so I encourage you to check them out because there's a lot of great stuff available on our channel. Remember that we do have those downloadable handouts. They're available on our website, so if you want to get to the Word 4 handout or really any other handout, you'll find them on our technology instruction page. So go to our website at mcl.org, click on Services from the main menu, and then select the technology instruction page. Once you're there, just scroll down and you will see all the handouts listed by the name of the class. All right, and as always, I hope you sign up for some more classes. So we're just about wrapped up for February. We do have an Excel 4 class later today, but the March classes are now available on our online calendar on our website. Okay, so you, and remember, if you want to retake a class, you can retake them as many times as you want. So check out the March calendar and register for whatever group classes interest you. And remember that also in that calendar, you'll find virtual private sessions. In March, all right, we're offering virtual private sessions on select Fridays between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. During these virtual sessions, we work with just you individually on a computer project you might need some help with. And in some cases, we can help you troubleshoot problems with your tech device. All right, so if you think you would benefit from a session like this, go ahead and sign up. You'll see them listed in the same calendar and just follow the instructions to book your appointment. Okay. If you have any other questions about our technology instruction program, you can always send us an email to techclass@mcl.org. All right. Otherwise, again, if you have any further questions about this class, you can direct them to the GoToMeeting chat feature. Otherwise, if you're all set for the day, you can click on the X in the upper right-hand corner of the GoToMeeting window and then select Leave Meeting. If you are leaving us, thanks so much for coming today. We hope to see you in class again very soon. Take care, everyone.